Good afternoon, everybody. Let's give us, I am just so astounded by the turnout today, you know. I was telling Mr. Brown, I said, I have not seen this many African-American people in Sonoma County. And if they were going to do a census, they should just do it right now. And on Saturday, I've been invited to the Redwood Empire Chinese Association's Chinese New Year's dinner, and they told me there's going to be 650 Chinese people there. And I told that to Brown, and he said, are they busing them up from Chinatown? It was 35 years ago, around this time, that I was a graduate student in Boston, and I was getting my degree in public policy, and I just got home. The winters there are a little different than the winter you're experiencing here. There was about 2 feet of snow on the ground, and I had just finished my midterms and headed back to the college because there was a Boston Celtics New York Knickerbocker game on. And for those of you who know me, I am a Knick fanatic even before Jeremy Lin. And I get a call from one of my classmates who says, Frank, we got to go see this guy Willie Brown. He's speaking at the law school. I said, I'm not getting out of the snow. I got the Warriors game on. I got my chicken wings going. No way. He said, no, you got to go see Willie Brown. So I dragged my butt to the law school, and there was a group of Latino students protesting his speaking there because they had been heard that there was a prison being built in their community. And Mr. Brown went up there, and for an hour and a half, he lectured them on the insides of politics and how some of the assembly people that represented him who were Latino had worked out an arrangement for the prison to be built in exchange for something else. And I said, wow, this is so interesting. So I elbowed my way up to the front at the end of the thing, and I said, I'm from San Francisco. I'd love a chance to work for you. And he said, when you get back to San Francisco, when you graduate, give me a call. I did that. I went to his law office in '87. He kept me waiting for 2 hours, so don't feel so bad. And I'm saying, man, he's not going to hire me. He's just going to give me a perfunctory interview. And then it's like a Godfather scene. You had ferns and dark wood panel walls on, remember Vallejo Street? And out comes, he finishes his meeting, these big doors open up, and out comes Eldridge Cleaver. I said, man, I'm in a different league. The interview couldn't have lasted more than 20 minutes. I told him about it. I went to Harvard, I went to Berkeley, and he said, I don't care about that, Frank. Tell me about your family. And I told him, my mother was a single mother. I'm the youngest of 5, and I just want to learn about politics. And he said to me, why do you want to work in politics? It's a snake pit. And I said, I want to learn from the head snake. He hired me off the streets. I never gave to his campaign, never worked on it. And it's been a wonderful friendship and mentorship. So when we talk about public service, if it wasn't for Willie Brown, I wouldn't be here today. And I just want to thank him. And today's talk is about public service. And you might hear about his personal life. You know, cars, clothes, and I won't mention the women. But if you look at his public policy, he was way ahead of it when it came to AIDS prevention. He was way ahead of it when it came to supporting gay rights. He supported Asian Americans when we were just a blip on the radar screen. So I think the whole community, the whole state, and the whole country owes a great deal of debt of gratitude. And please join me in welcoming my friend and mentor, Willie L. Brown, Jr.
Thank you. 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 Frank, there's not that many of them here. They're all in the front row. I am, of course, delighted that Brian and your student association invited me to come to Santa Rosa for your Black History Month college celebration. For a long time, frankly, I've wanted to visit Santa Rosa Junior College because it was the first place where Mayor George Moscone entered the college world. He was the son of a single mother, great high school basketball player in San Francisco, and you would have assumed he would have automatically gone to USF, but George and his family could not put that quite together. And he ended up at Santa Rosa JC before he went off to UOP and ultimately returned to San Francisco. So those of us who are Mosconeites owe everybody that had anything to do with his development a favor. And I'm here to say George Moscone is the inspiration. And Frank is correct. I did appoint him to work with me, and ultimately I put him on a board of education in San Francisco. Got a chance to appoint him to that, and he just reminded me that when walking in here that was the single worst thing that I ever did to him in life was put him on a school board. And as he was introducing me to another school board member, school boards obviously are very, very challenging because for politicians, they really are places and spaces where you deal with a constituency that's like full time in your face on behalf of their children. I served in the legislature for many, many, many years, 31 years. I'd probably still be there had they not had term limits. I was perfectly happy being in Sacramento full time and having a good time doing all the things that I did. But the voters proceeded to say there are term limits, and you got to leave. So after 1995 and 96, I was scheduled to leave. I looked around for something to do, and in all of those 30 plus years of holding public office, running for public office, participating in almost every decision of any substance that was made in the state of California, outside of the state of California, serving on the Board of Regents of the University of California for 15 years, on the State College Board of Trustees for 15 years, and just done some of everything, literally, in this state in terms of public policy making. And it seemed a great waste to me not to keep using my services. And so I know it's a bit of arrogance, but so what? I looked at San Francisco, and Moscone having been assassinated, it really took it away from me. I wanted nothing to do with local government. But with no other place to go, as a politician, you sometimes will be very practical, and I was. It appeared as if I could win the mayor's race, even though there was already a mayor. Mr. Mayor, there was a fellow that had the job, and he wanted to keep the job, and I needed a job. And so, I decided, well, he's white, he can probably get another job. But I can, and so I decided I'd run against him. Ordinarily, I wouldn't do that, because he had a wife and family and a mortgage, and I had a wife and family and a mortgage, and no relatives. And so I just decided I'd run against him, and I ran, and I won. I tell you that story in that way because I didn't know anything about local government. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I didn't know one way or another what you do in local government. I'd spent most of my career trying to abolish local government. And now here I am addressing local government from a positive standpoint. And I had obviously never had to, when you run for the state legislature, once you get elected, you really don't have to ring doorbells and ask people to vote for you anymore. You just kind of put your name on the ballot, and it just happens. And you even, unless you become really high profile, nobody knows who you really are. They don't scream at you or yell at you or ask you any questions. And if you can get elected and not have to be responsive to that, that's a good thing. And so coming back to run for public office was like coming to speak at Santa Rosa Junior College. You actually see real people, breathing people, people who act like they're paying attention to what you're saying. So you got to be careful with how you say it. Well, in the first debate in running for office in San Francisco for mayor, because of the reputation and the long history and being the Speaker of the California legislature, et cetera, and the audience was there. CNN showed up with all of its television cameras, and they wanted to literally record what happens when this awesome alleged person comes back or to do something at the local level. And I knew that I really had to, put it on, and I instantly started to pray. I started to ask the Lord. I said, now, I haven't called up on you too often, and not for very much, and I realize that I don't have a lot of equity, but this is one of those opportunities for me and for you. I really could be better than I've been. And all you need to do is just kind of help me along. And I said, now you can really help me if I don't get the first question in this debate with these 5 or 6 other people. And sure enough, one of the other persons, the incumbent mayor, got the job of answering the first question. And I was very pleased. The Lord had obviously responded, because I needed to listen to somebody else answering the question, so I kind of know what to say. And lo and behold, it was the wrong person to give, because he knew nothing about what was asked, or at least he didn't act like he knew anything. He spent full time attacking me. He called me everything under the sun, said I'd taken contributions from everybody else in the world, and what am I going to do? Some lady in the back stood up and yelled. That's what I mean by local government. Stood up and yelled, "Willie Brown, yeah, he just accused you of thus and so. Why don't you respond?" And I said to her, well, I'm really sorry. I can't respond because half of what he said is true. In the process of holding public office for 30 plus years, now 40 plus years, you come across all kinds of challenges. You can come across all kinds of people. And in that contest for the mayorship of San Francisco and things subsequent, it caused me to go back and examine everything that I've had an occasion to do in my adult life. You see, my career did not start as many of my colleagues and many of my peers and my contemporaries really did. I did not graduate from a regular high school. I graduated from a place called Mineola Colored High. On my high school diploma is exactly that, Mineola Colored High. And it's one of my proud objects. It's one of the things that I really love, because when you come into my office and you take one look at that and you wonder whether or not I'm faking it. But I graduated from that high school, and I was only the 3rd class to graduate from that high school. Prior to my class and my sister's class ahead of me in one of the class, this school only went to the 8th grade. You did not go 9, 10, 11, and 12. You went to the 8th grade. If you wanted to go 9, 10, 11, and 12, you had to go to another town in the county, because for people of color, black folk, they didn't have anything beyond the 8th grade for you to do. They raised it one time to the 10th grade, and then they moved it up to the 12th grade. And they call that separate but equal educational opportunities in this nation. In that context, in my high school, for purposes of teaching me mathematics, they had a fellow named Gregory, Charles Lord Gregory. Charles Lord Gregory was a PE major in college. He's one of the few people in the teaching group that had actually graduated from college. But he was a PE major, and he was the basketball coach, he was the football coach, he was the track coach, and he was the baseball coach. And all he knew was sports and sports-related activities. But they didn't have a job teaching sports. They had a job teaching mathematics. And they didn't have anybody else to teach mathematics. And so Charles Lord Gregory was the math teacher. And I'll never forget how grateful I am to him, because the first day in that class, he said, let's get one thing straight. I don't know anything about algebra. I don't know anything about geometry. I didn't do well in either one of those courses, either in college or high school, and I'm supposed to teach you. It is for sure that I can't teach you anything about either one of these subject matters. What I can do, though, is I can develop in you the ability and the discipline to memorize. And so for me, you memorize the book from back to front. The examination will be regularly on the contents of the book, and you'll be graded on your ability to relate the contents of the book to me, based strictly on your memory, whether you understand them or not. That was incredible discipline, because it served me well in politics. I love all the information I can get my hands on. I may not understand it, but you are not about to challenge whether or not I can relate it, because I can. And I thank Charles Lord Gregory for that. In another one of the classes in the school, we had history. And in the ninth grade, the only history I got was Negro history. It was awesome that every name that Brian referenced, plus a whole number of others in this little bitty town, literally, we walked through those names. We walked through the profiles of what they'd done in terms of their own lives. And we wasn't, at school, didn't have anybody who could think well enough about the NAACP or about any of the other black advocacy organizations, or at that time, they called them Negro advocacy organizations, but they did talk about the symbols and the people, whether it was the Tuskegee Airmen, etc. Well, for that first year of any kind of real history, it was Negro history. The second year of history was Texas history. You learned Texas history just like you learned Negro history. You learned about all of the favorite persons who were of any importance to the development of Texas. You learned about the challenges that Texas faced in terms of the nation, and you learned one more thing, that Texas information chain was really, really less attractive than almost any other place in the country, because when Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, we didn't get that word. He signed it in January, we got the word in June. And so we celebrate his signing in June because, there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, there was none of the above. But we learned all that through the Texas history and the Negro history process. And then the third year, it was world history. And world history, of course, U.S. history. And then the fourth year was world history. And a combination of those two things, you get supposedly the complete education. Well, just think about that. Now we're doing Black History Month in this nation. The history foundation that I got at Mineola Colored High is probably equal to, if not superior, to any history that any of you who did not go through Mineola Colored High or a similar venue have ever received. One of the reasons why we have Black History Month, we really do need to pause, and we need to walk through the contributions and the experience of a people who were at one time enslaved in this country, and a people who were in part responsible for the great challenge internally that this nation had, and then for an evolutionary process that still exists today in terms of trying to adjust to the idea of extending equality and including this collection of people and all of the context of the constitutional rules and regulations in the interpretation thereto. One of the most amazing things that you'll find almost anywhere you go in this nation, unless you come across a collection of people like yourselves in some village here in America, you ask them about African Americans, and they know almost nothing about African Americans. Where I learned about African Americans in Negro history class, it was an expansion on what moms and dads talked about in the household. Well, moms and dads don't talk about Negro history or Black history in households across this nation unless it is Black households. But for this nation and for the strength of this nation, there clearly needs to be an infusion of knowledge and information, not only about African Americans, but about all of the various diverse ethnicities and cultures that have made up this incredible nation. And so during Black History Month, we should think through that process, because believe me, the richness of this nation is often missed unless there is some relationship with the knowledge and the culture. I said a couple of days ago, I say, well, Willie Brown, sometimes you indicate that there's still a problem in this nation as it relates to African Americans. I said, yeah, there really is. He said, you cite me an example. So I looked at him. He's in the finance world. So I said, tell me, what Black person do you know who's been indicted for insider trading? He said, none. I said, you don't think it's because we are more moral than you are, do you? It's because we're not part of the financial service delivery system that would afford us the opportunity to get information that would allow us to be an insider trader. That is an example of racism still existing in this country because everybody else is, in fact, eligible for that. There are just so many places and spaces that still need to be aggressively addressed. I mean, aggressively addressed. I noted just today, when I looked at the New York Times, that the Supreme Court has now agreed with somebody's request coming out of my state of Texas. A woman asked to enroll in the University of Texas, and she maintains that her grades were better than Frank's or mine's or Ernesto's or somebody that was not her color, and she had moved that all the way to the Supreme Court. And the last time that issue was before the Supreme Court, Sandra Day O'Connor wrote the deciding opinion in the Michigan case that resulted in the case in which the court said the business of race legitimately can be considered in the admission process to universities and schools in this nation. They did not say you're required. They did not say you must give preferential treatment. What they said was you must recognize that race is, in fact, a factor, and you don't need to deny it or be silent about it. And if you do include it, as you would almost any other thing that says someone is eligible for the opportunity for the education, that there will be, obviously, a justifiable reason. Well, the court now, with Sandra Day O'Connor gone, could very well go just the other way, because her replacement, the man's Alita, the same Alita who replaced her, may very well vote in a different direction. And if he does vote in a different direction, the attention of all of us must be focused on somehow trying to ensure that at some point this nation continues down the road that will ultimately open the door of opportunity for everybody, consistent with what King said in '63 in the March on Washington, consistent with what a whole host of other people whom you may not have heard, but have echoed those words. And in those words, we're not in pursuit of an advantage. It was in pursuit of the removal of the known disadvantages and of the artificial disadvantages and of the silent disadvantages until this nation deals in that fashion. And until when the spigot is turned on and the water spills therefrom, and the contents of the water is that which is all America on an equal basis, this nation will not be as strong. This nation will not be as attractive, and this nation will not be as interesting as it could be. And it will not be the example for the rest of the world to follow in living as human beings on this planet. Thank you very much. Now we're going to ask the question. Now, Frank told you that when he saw me at Harvard that I talked a long time. Well, that's true. I did talk a long time, and I did not talk a long time here. But you had structured it in such a way that you said do 20 or 30 minutes, and then we'll do question and answer. I happen to prefer the question and answer operation. I really do just love engaging in exchanges with people. Because you see, one of the things that I did, Frank, when I was at San Francisco State, I was a debater. I really looked forward to demonstrating how smart I really wasn't. And I still look forward to doing that.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, because that's how I refer to him. We're going to have opportunity for the public to ask questions. And I just ask that you keep it questions direct and brief so that he has opportunity to answer as many questions as possible. But I'll take the prerogative of the president to ask the first question. You're at a community college, and as you know, Mr. Speaker, that community college funding and public education funding is really decreasing. What would you tell the students, the faculty, the community? What advice would you give us as a political consultant in terms of how do we get back to getting the kind of support we need for public education?
Elect only people who are openly committed and actively participating in free boutique education. And I say free boutique education because education cannot be designed to fit the school. Education's got to be designed to fit the attendee at the school. And one time in this country, we really were about electing people who claimed they were the education president, they were the education mayor, they were the education city council person. Education was number one on everybody's agenda. We've got to take our political types back to that. Education has to be equal to public safety in terms of the use of resources. Because after all, education could wipe out the need for public safety.
Whoa. Yeah, thank you. Hey, questions? Please identify yourself and ask your question, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Bobby Shim. I'm the Vice President, Membership and Marketing for the Associated Student Senate here. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, Mr. Brown. I'm asking this question on behalf of the Senate, and we are curious what your most challenging decision you had to make was as the mayor of San Francisco.
I did 8 years in that job as mayor of San Francisco. And I must tell you that almost every single solitary day, there was another decision that was make or break the city and make or break the mayorship and what have you. Probably the most challenging one was that I won only by a very small vote. And it was a vote of the people to save the 49ers.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Linda with the local chapter of NAACP, and I'm curious, with your varied experiences all your life, what do you have your sights set on now?
I have my sights set on re-electing Barack Obama.
Ooh.
I must tell you as an aside to that, it was 2004, and I received a telephone call from an NAACP friend of mine, head of the foundation now of the NAACP, Eugene Duffy from Atlanta, Georgia, and we have a network of African Americans around the country that helps other African Americans running for public office to keep them competitive with resources and brain power and what have you. And he called me up, he said, we got this brother in Illinois, who's a state senator, and he's gonna run for US Senator. His name is Barack Obama, and you need to bring him out to California and raise some money for him. And I said, what's his real name? And he said, no, man, his name Barack Obama. I'll have him call you. Well, sure enough, a person named Barack Obama called me and said, I understand you have some trouble accepting my real name. I said, yeah, I do. I said, what I'd like to know is, what did they call you in Memphis? He said, I was not raised in Memphis. Where were you raised? I was raised in Hawaii. I said, okay, so your name Barack Obama, you're raised in Hawaii, and you want me to raise some money for you? You think you're going to get elected? No, forget it. That's not possible. So he said, oh, yeah, let me convince you. We had a big event for him at the Waterfront Restaurant in San Francisco, and he told the story about me insisting that he had a different name. Well, lo and behold, not only does he proceed to win in Illinois and become a U.S. Senator and gave the great speech at the convention for One America, and then he goes on to win the presidency. And on the Wednesday morning after he won the presidency in November of 2008, by now I'm writing a column for the Chronicle and what have you, and my office said there is someone on the phone said that don't give you their name, just tell you to get on. And I got on. It could have been Frank. Oh, you know, none of my mentees and friends pull that kind of stunt. So I got on. He said, is this Willie Brown, the columnist? I said, yes. The ex-mayor? I said, yes, it is. He said, I want you to know that this is President-elect Barack Hussein Obama.
That's great.
So I have lived with the fear that his memory is still there. So I'm pushing hard, him get reelected, to straighten out that little problem we had 2004.
Great.
Hello, Mr. Brown. My name is Damian Square. I'm a student here at the JC. I'm a son of a single parent, so hopefully I can get joined into the club. But I come from Columbus, Georgia, and with African-American males making up a mere 7% of United States population, but accounting for a little over 30% of the prison population in the United States, what can we do to curtail the mass incarceration of minorities in an age of supposedly colorblindness?
Well, Richard Branson, the fellow who did Virgin Records and Virgin Airlines, Virgin America, and all those things that he does, including trying to fly to the moon. At the Grammys the other night, when he was being honored, gave me a number that is staggering. He said, there are more African Americans under lock and key today in this country, in the criminal justice system, than the total number of African Americans who were ever enslaved. Wow. That's an awesome figure. That is something that this nation needs to focus on, because we clearly have failed ourselves and we've failed lots of our citizens. The criminal justice system is maybe the most shining example of what I said earlier about African Americans not being indictees for insider trading. Almost every other single crime that you can think of, African Americans have a greater chance of being convicted of those crimes when accused than any other collection of people. As a practicing lawyer, I can tell you, I was a criminal defense lawyer. My batting average with an African American client was drastically different than my batting average with a non-African American, because the system reflects itself in terms of its inequality in the most gross fashion. We need to address that. Simultaneously, part of the educational delivery system for each of us in our own communities, in our own neighborhoods, has got to be a rigid code that we aren't going to tolerate anybody violating the law. Even jaywalking must be addressed as a serious issue, because for an African American, jaywalking could be the foundation for a conspiracy charge to block traffic. That's how difficult it is in this nation to deal. And we need to pass the word on to our folk. And when I say education, in many cases, African American males become the first victim of the disappointment in terms of job opportunities and other opportunities, and the resort to things that cause the justice system to become attentive to their existence. And it evidences itself by foster parenting. It evidences itself in almost every way that you can think of in which the system attempts to deal with people. It is an awesome problem, and it is one that requires dedicated attention of a people who would lack on a timetable basis to reduce that share of the population in the prison system.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hello, Mr. Brown. Michelle Dowling, Associate Students Vice President of Advocacy. In your book, Being Brown, you describe something called the barbershop test. And can you describe this for us and how it can help us here at the Santa Rosa Junior College on a local level relate to our other outside constituent groups?
I did a book back in, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago.
2008.
I think 2008, February of 2008, we published a book, and it actually made the New York Times bestseller list. I remember when I got called to say, you got to go on a book tour, and you got to go from place to place, and one of the places you're going to go is Walmart. I ain't write no book to be going to Walmart. But when they explained to me that the book, that Walmart only chooses 5 books a month to put in their list of things to be sold, and that they sell, apparently, a lot more books than anybody ever knew. I tried to go to every Walmart in this country. And at one of the Walmarts, one of the people, like the lady, like your student president, your student vice president here, asked me about the content of the book, one of the things in the book, and it was the barbershop. For those of you who know that one of the central oral history, current and otherwise, places in the African American community is the barbershop. You go there whether you want a haircut or not. You go there because that's the crossroads. I suppose for black females, the beauty shop. Saying, but I didn't make the beauty shop. I made barbershop. I didn't start cross-dressing then. So I went to the barbershop. And in the barbershop, once you rise to the level of being recognized as an educated lawyer or a person who's been elected and what have you, you become the referee. You become the source of information to settle a dispute between people in the barbershop. Somebody will say, it was Satchel Paige that threw that third pitch. And somebody else will say, no, it wasn't Satchel Paige, it was Joe Black. And the arguments will go on, range on, and then they'll start betting on who's right. And you come in, okay, Miss Brown's gonna tell us who's right. When you got the opportunity to be elevated to the level where you became the oracle, you became the fountain of information and knowledge in the barbershop, what you had to make sure is, don't make a mistake. Because next week, you'll be called on it, and your opportunity to impress folk in that barbershop setting. That's one of the functions of the barbershop.
Thank you. No, keep going.
Hello, Mr. Speaker. My name is Dr. Christian Gunderson. I'm running for State Assembly for our area. And the question I have for you is, what's the best way to reinvigorate California?
Get elected to public office.
Yes, sir, I will do it.
And carry it on your back. And you got elected by literally going door to door. I ran for the state legislature in 1962 against an incumbent, a 20-year incumbent at that time. He became a 22-year incumbent because I lost. I lost by just under 1,000 votes. Well, the day after I lost, in November, I started going door to door to ring doorbells to say thank you, as if you voted for me. And in the process, 2 years later, I won. I beat him by 4,000 votes, so he became a victim after 22 years, not 20 years. I tell you that nothing pleased me more, because till this day, the fact that I actually asked someone to vote for me, and many of those people, some of those people are still there, they still remember that. And you could not define me any differently than they defined me by virtue of that personal exposure and that personal experience. And when I mentioned earlier about the great challenge on the 49er stadium deal, we won that, and we didn't start winning till the vote count got to 95 or 96% of the total count. And when we went back and evaluated how we won it because of the personal development of contact between the people and us. If you want to reinvigorate California, politicians have got to reinvent the reinvigoration between themselves and the persons and the people. They've got to get away from the electronic instruments and the billboards and the ads being the foundation for the persuasion. And when they do get that trust and confidence, they won't worry about whether or not they're pleasing the people. They will have to please the people to keep the job.
Thank you, sir. I will do that.
Hello, Mr. Brown. I actually have two questions. With my first question, this individual asked you what we could do to keep African Americans out of jail, because they are 7% of America's population and 30% of the prison population. And I heard you call it an awesome problem and say it needed to be addressed, but I didn't hear you say what we could do to stop it or to prevent it.
Then you didn't hear it. You didn't listen.
I did.
I cited right out of the box the need for the education component applicable in the African American community. I cited the fact that the criminal justice system is fraught with a considerable amount of the injustices that reflect itself in the general population, which means inside of that delivery system, where the people, when they're charged or not charged, built into that system is all of the prejudices that we experience and the racism we experience. We need to address that. Just those two items. So you didn't hear me.
Sure. Oh well, I heard various parts of what you said, but what could we do to free people from the racism that's in their hearts, aside from educating African Americans to not do that? What can we do to free people from the racism that's in their hearts that causes them to make judgments like that?
I don't have an answer for what frees people whose hearts are plagued with that kind of a virus. I would say, though, that I still maintain that the church in this country, in spite of church separation, state separation, it plays a role in the ultimate conduct that we engage in, and it plays a role in how we react to other human beings.
So
And
the church.
between the church and the family, you may get some relief.
All right. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, Mr. Brown. This question goes for both of you. You touched on constitutional rights during your talk, and you also mentioned how you're focused on re-electing Obama. And I was wondering, this is for you, Mr. Chung, as well, as a former member of the Obama administration. What is your opinion on Section 1021 of the National Defense Authorization Act, which allows the U.S. president...
I got no idea what that is.
It allows the U.S. president to indefinitely detain U.S. citizens without a trial. So you support Obama nevertheless?
I support the Obama's administration and Eric Holder in the management of the U.S. Justice Department that includes addressing those issues. On various occasions, you obviously, as I do, read that there's some confrontation, whether it's Guantanamo Bay or whether it's allegedly some black box operation in some other place. Much of it is glorified in movies, much of it is complained about in television shows, but on balance, I'm not there. I won't second guess. I buy into whatever Obama and Holder are doing.
And what about Operation Fast and the Furious, which has put Holder in a very serious position with the rest of the government?
He will have to answer to whatever the facts prove to be in his management of the Justice Department. And the reference, for those of you who don't know, Fast and Furious is allegedly the business of allowing for weapon movement.
It's not alleged, it's on record.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is April Harris, and I am adjunct faculty in the Humanities Department here at SRJC. And my question is kind of reflective of everything else that's been said this afternoon, but more specifically, a colleague just reminded me that more cuts have come down the pipe today. And how are we to prepare our students in a multicultural environment with no resources? Do you have any suggestions on how we can get really creative like you did in all of your administrations to kind of help turn this tide?
Well, as I said earlier to the young man who referenced running for public office and someone else who talked about education, and Frank, who mentioned education at the outset, I think you got to hold those of us who seek and hold public office totally and completely accountable. There literally has to be a reconfiguration of what limited resources there may be, and we've got to prioritize those resources in such a way that the long-range benefit that comes from the use of those resources for education will be recognized at the outset. So you, as we did, and it's interesting that I don't remember exactly the year, but it was like 82 or 83, and it was the first time anybody had ever said that if you attend a community college, you had to pay something. And we held up the budget to stop the administration from imposing what essentially would have been tuition on community colleges. They did, ultimately, we did compromise for a $50 fee or some other, but that was also a misstep. So you've got to do what should be done and what we attempted to do, and that's reverse it.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Hi, Mr. Brown. My name's Phyllis Justine. I'm a librarian here at the college. And I'm with you when you asked Dr. Chong about his people. And I'm curious about your history from Mineola Colored High. How did you get to be a lawyer?
Well, I got a scholarship when I graduated. I graduated like on May 17th, 1951 from Mineola Colored High. I graduated second in my class. Now, some of you said, that's fabulous. Yeah. Well, there wasn't but 13 people in my class. So my resume says second in the class, but you ought to know there wasn't no 450 people or 4,000 people. But I got a scholarship, and the scholarship was to Prairie View A&M. Prairie View A&M is Prairie View Agriculture and Mechanical College, a black school in Hempstead, Texas, just outside of Houston. And I was graduated on the 17th. I was in school within a week because you had to go during the summer, and part of the scholarship was you worked because the school raised food to feed the students and what have you. So I was shipped off to school so quick and shipped off to college in Hempstead, Texas. Well, I got there and they fed you in the dormitory with 8 people at the table. I was at a table with 7 guys there on athletic scholarships and me. And they served you family-wise. So those guys would pass the plate around among themselves, the bowl, and when it got to me, there was nothing in it. And I looked around the room, and there were several other tables similarly situated where these nerdy little guys like me were being killed on the food side. So I organized those guys, and we went up to protest. Well, one thing you don't do in that day and age is protest in black colleges. I found my clothing on a bus going home without me because they had taken my scholarship and sent me home, and my mother was so embarrassed. She yielded to what had been my desire and my uncle's desire. I had an uncle named Itzy Collins. He lived in San Francisco. Uncle Itzy came out during the war because he couldn't pass any of the physicals or the mental tests to go to war. He came out to work in the defense industry. And when he got here like, I guess about on payday, and he saw all these guys receiving this money, and he was a pretty good gambler. He said, why would I work? Why don't I just gamble with them? And he became a big-time gambler in San Francisco. My mother was horrified that her brother, who didn't have a Social Security card, didn't go to church and all those kinds of things. But all of a sudden, she had to be nice to him because he was going to bail her out by letting me come live with him. I came to San Francisco with my uncle and came to his house, and he, of course, knew nothing, so to speak, about college and what have you. He said, there's a place down in Palo Alto called Stanford. You seem to be a smart boy. Why don't you go down to Stanford and see if you can get in? I went down to Stanford and took their entrance exam, and of course, I didn't pass their entrance exam, but there was a guy named Duncan Gillies who ended up teaching at San Francisco at your state university, your state college here at Roanoke Park, Sonoma State. He was working part-time, and he saw me in line, and he saw what I'd done and how I'd answered the question. And he said, you're never going to be able to make Stanford. I didn't even ask him the price. You're never going to be able to make Stanford. He says, but I work at San Francisco State. They are desperate for students. I can get you in up there on probation, and if you make it the first 6 months or 6 weeks or whatever, you probably, without going through the test, you probably can go to college. And sure enough, Duncan Gillies, I went back up to San Francisco. I went to San Francisco State on a pass, first affirmative action entry, to San Francisco State University, and at that time it was called college, and I got pink slips, pink notices on the first 6 weeks, because you were speaking a different language than I learned in Mineola. But by the first semester, I was okay, because I discovered that they were grading on a curve. And all you had to be was on the right side of that curve, and you had it made. And I figured out how to get on the right side of that curve, and that's how I made it. And I ended up graduating from San Francisco State. I lived on campus. Ultimately, I left my uncle and moved on campus. And I ran into a guy named Benny Travis, who was from Brooklyn, New York. He was a veteran, brilliant guy, never, ever sober. And he wanted to go to law school. He was talking about law school. I didn't know anything about law school, but I was for certain not going to get drafted. And I was in the ROTC, Air ROTC. John Burton and I were literally in the same drill team in the Air ROTC. You graduate in the Air ROTC, you immediately get second lieutenant bars, but you go to war. You go to, and I wasn't up for that. That wasn't part of my deal. And so I resigned from ROTC, which means you're going to get drafted right away. Well, Benny Travis was going to go to law school, and I went down to law school with him, make sure he got down there. We're good friends. And I went in the room where they were discussing his career with him and testing him, and I was answering the questions better than Benny. They admitted me to law school. That's how I got to law school. I got to law school on a fluke, and I ended up graduating from law school, and Benny flunked out of law school, but he came back the next year. He went on, and interesting, I went on law school, graduated from law school, and went on into politics, and Benny graduated from law school, and I ended up getting Benny a judgeship, ultimately, and to pay him back by having helped me get into law school. That's how I got there.
All right, we have one more?
Yeah.
Thank you. One more question.
Hi, Speaker Brown. My name is Ann Donegan. I'm a history instructor here, and I have to proudly say that as a resident in San Francisco in the 90s, I did vote for you twice. So thank you very much.
Wait a minute. Only
Same
twice?
Well,
I hope it was the
twice in
same
one
election.
year. Twice in 1 year.
No, I hope it was the same election.
Yeah, exactly.
I said that because I was actually on the ballot 18 times in San Francisco.
Wow.
18 times.
Well, in the 90s?
Hmm?
While I was there in the 90s?
No, I was only on twice in 19.
Okay. Well, my question is this. You, as a Sacramento insider, what do you think about Governor Brown's likelihood of having the taxes initiatives passed this upcoming year? And if they don't pass, what do you expect will happen to our beautiful state?
Well, first of all, they must pass. So I don't even want to project. I don't want to project the state without revenues. I don't want to try to figure out how to live with that horror, period. Secondly, I do think that Jerry Brown's measure will pass. As a matter of fact, I think there might be more than his measure. I think there may be a second measure. The question is, the battle is going to be who finishes first. I believe this state is prime and ready to receive directions on increasing revenues. Unlike many other places in the nation, this state is prepared to embrace the idea that politicians should be given resources to help respond to the needs of the population, period. And I anticipate that that result will give us those additional revenues.
Great. Well, on behalf of the college, I want to thank Mr. Brown. I'm going to ask Mark and Jessica to come up and present Mr. Brown with some gifts.
Gifts?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're not elected anymore, so you don't have to report this. So
I didn't report it when I was elected.
take it out. Yeah. Since you're such a clothes horse, we got you some clothes we expect you to wear when you're strutting down. Hold it up and take a picture, yeah. He's a bear cub now.
Oh.
And then the other thing is we know you're going to share this wine. That's our Schoen Farms wine that we grow right here. We run a winery that we're very proud of. And we expect you to sell this to all your friends in San Francisco. Let's give Willie Brown a big hand. Thank you.
Hold that. Now put it right in there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.